We are live, and we are almost live on Facebook. Yes, yes. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the newest edition of the Bishop and I on this wonderful day. Hope everybody's doing well tonight. Sunday, November the 10th. I almost said October. Hopefully we have good service the whole time. I switched the internet service up, man. I had to switch it up. I don't want to give credit to who we got, but I don't want to say that because I don't want to be advertising for nobody.
They paying me.
Hey, what's up, Tom?
So you ain't paying me, so why should
I don't know what's going on.
Why should I get with that?
Man, Virginia, what's going on, Olympic athlete? So as you guys can see in the title tonight, we want to talk, we'll spend the discussion talking about the Harriet movie, Byron Allen's lawsuit. We want to talk about the idea of patriarchy in Black America and why that can be problematic, that title. What's up, Robert? How'd them Cowboys do today? Cowboy fan right there. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure he's a Cowboy fan. And then we want to talk about this Voice of San Diego article about policing in the state of California. Mm-hmm. So, but as usual, man, I always love to say, man, how much of a blessing it is to just be able to have these conversations with you. You know, I always check you out as you on Twitter and Facebook, mostly on Twitter instead of you post a lot. I don't see you too active on Instagram, but
a little bit. I post a picture here or there.
Yeah. So, but man, it's just always good, man. I look forward to this time that we get to chat and just talk about what we think makes sense. Shout out to Robert Wood.
That
we interviewed last week.
Appreciate that. Yeah.
Brother did a fabulous job. His story is incredible. He's a great. He makes for a great conversation. Mm-hmm. His life is dynamic, and it was cool to see him. And again, brother, welcome home. Robert and Freedom looks good on you, brother. But man, just a blessing, man. You're a blessing to me, man. I appreciate you. Appreciate your space in the world. I appreciate the space that you take up, and then what you do with it when you're in that space, man. People don't realize how important you are to our city, and how much you're called on by people. Your voice really matters, and I think it's difficult for people to realize that per se, because media kind of has a way of villainizing folks in a real slick kind of way. Mm-hmm. But I hope people realize that when the media seeks you out, you don't just show up where they're at and ask to talk. They actually call you.
Right.
The media actually calls you to do interviews and stuff. And I think people need to understand that. I think sometimes people don't really realize, and you don't promote yourself. Right. Like you ain't out here going, hey, look at me. Yeah. But I don't think people realize, man, that people actually want to hear the things that you want to say, that you have to say.
I'm surprised by that, but
I'm not. And I think why I'm not surprised is, number one, is because if you say something about something, people can pretty much take it to the bank that you've studied it. You probably got a series of notes on whatever you're talking about, and what you're saying is right. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And you have a heart for people. And I know sometimes even in our show, man, we'll talk about some very difficult topics. Some people may, and only thing I want to ask people though, seriously, man, is I just want to say, man, you may not agree with our position, but I'm just asking that you would be fair enough to listen to the totality of what we're saying and don't prejudge the things that we're saying. We're going to talk about all kinds of issues and lifestyles. And so, but shout out to you, man. Love you a lot. Really got a mad amount of respect for you, and just looking forward to the conversation tonight.
Absolutely. Love you too, man. And respect you too, man. And like I always say, you know, when we first met down in Philly,
hey, I walked in the hotel and Bishop was probably about 20 pounds heavier on swole. He had his white beater on with some Chuck Taylor. I said, man, this dude looked like a bully from the 70s. So he about to sock me up. Who they room me with, man?
He straight up cool.
He said, hey, man, I'm about to go to the gym. Homie, what you going to do? I said, go get some coffee.
He didn't feel phased at all. But the moment we hooked up and started having conversations from religion to politics to community, we just connected. It was like, wow, okay, I found somebody that like-minded, you know, and think the same way on a lot of things, you know. And when we got back, we kind of missed a little beat in the sense because we wanted to connect, and because we had some things, we said, man, let's roll this, man. And we kind of, you know, busy and, you know, and the whole shebang. But really, you know, I know you don't play around. That's the thing I really appreciate about you, you know, when it comes to your family, when it comes to your job, when it comes to what you do in the community. Anything you do, you take it serious and you take it to the next level. You know, I remember when you was talking about, you know, homework, it was just a vision, the thought of what you wanted to do. Next, you know, like you doing it. And so that's the thing I really appreciate about you. And so it's you know, when you say something, I'm listening, because either I'm gonna learn from it if it's something that I haven't heard before, if it's something that if I disagree, it's challenging me to think deeper, to go deeper. And that's the thing we got to do with, you know, the Bible talks about iron sharpening iron. And that's the way I kind of see us, as iron sharpening iron. So I really appreciate you being that piece of iron that can keep me sharp, you know, and keep me in place and bring that balance, as we always talk about, because I'm crazy. I'm extremist sometimes, you know, I'm radical. I'll say and do things and then regret it. So appreciate you, because you kind of bring that balance. Well, no, let's look at it like this. So, okay, you got a good thought there. And that's you saved me. So I appreciate it, man.
Right on, man. That's cool, man. That's cool. Well, let's jump right into the first topic. I just wanted to hit on basically, man, I think just wanted to maybe talk a little bit about the Harriet movie. And there's been a lot of hype behind it. Obviously, this is a movie that Cynthia Erivo, who is Nigerian, I believe, Nigerian American, if I'm not mistaken. No, British Nigerian. She's from Britain. And my issue basically is not. I guess it is so much that, you know, she's not ADOS and she's representing an ADOS woman telling a very intimate story. And I think from the reviews, I haven't seen the movie. I watch it on bootleg, you know what I'm saying? But I'm not going to pay to go see it. I'll go watch it on bootleg or whatever, you know what I'm saying? I'll do that, but I won't go watch it. But the problem that I think more than anything is that we need to have an American descendant of slavery playing that part. If we're looking at, I want to say characters in the movie, people that are relevant to the history of slaves, then I think somebody who is a slave needs to play that part. People are saying, well, what about so-and-so played Malcolm X or whatever? You know, that is different. Like, you know, you can make up some things when you're talking about Malcolm X, because if you don't have anybody that was right there, Hollywood has to embellish some of the story, right? We understand that. You're not going to get any movie out of Hollywood that is only going to tell a story, and only, you know, they have to, you know, they trivialize certain things, or they focus on one part. And the issue that I'm having with people that have seen the movie or whatever is that number one, they focus the movie on a black slave catcher who was murdered by a white slave catcher in order to win or to save Harriet. And then some of the things that was pointed out too, if you look at some of the pictures, Harriet's face, she looked really scared. But if you see the still pictures of her, like, Harriet didn't look scared. That sister didn't look, you know, you can't do the stuff that she did and look scared, right? But I just don't think that white America is willing to hear and want to hear or see strong black women. I just don't think that doesn't fit the narrative and what it takes to be someone who was not afraid to challenge the entire system that would cost you your lives. Slaves would get their ears cut off and stuff if they got caught running away. And she didn't care. She carried a gun. She had blow their heads off, and they knew it. And then last thing I'll say is I just don't know how, a white slave catcher, just a white person, period, plantation owner, whatever, slave catcher would give a black man a gun and tell him to go catch slaves. So what happens if you out catching a slave and all of a sudden somebody that don't know you think that you a slave to them and you running away, and now there's a problem? Like, get out of here, man. Black people wasn't no slave police. I'm not saying that there wasn't no snitches and people telling, but they wasn't letting brothers walk around with guns. Are you kidding me? That's crazy. That don't even make sense. And so just to make up that whole story and whatever, you know what I mean, that was the case with Harriet. To me, I think it's a sham, and I'm disappointed in what I've heard about the movie. But the bigger part is about the lawsuit. But what is
Comcast.
your thing about, what have you heard about the movie, or do you have a view on it? Do you care?
Yeah, I did hear about the movie. Same, same things you heard. My thing with Enrivo, is that how you say her name?
Cynthia Erivo.
Yeah, Cynthia Erivo, is, she looks down on Black folks in America, right? She made a clear distinction between who she is, Nigerian and so on, versus who we are over here in America, right? From our Black women to our Black men using the word akata, which is the N-word, derogatory terms towards, Black Americans, or as we would say, American descendants of slavery. There's a big debate now, and between Foundation of Black Americans and ADOS, all the same, but folks are tripping and stuff. So
that's Tariq. Is Tariq Nasheed doing that Foundation of Black Americans?
Yeah. So him and
Antonio Moore
and Yvette is having some differences, and then Dr. Boyce Watkins kind of interject himself into it. I listen to what he said. He says I understand, agree with what he's saying.
Mm-hmm.
I don't disagree with what he's saying. But we're American descendants of slavery. We're founded right here in America, so they look down on us, right? So now you want to come and play a role of a person who was actually in during slavery time and so on, and what we come from. That's our roots. That's our history. And you spit on our grave, you spit on her grave, and then you want to come play actor. So yeah, I have a problem with that. And I think that, now it's a little different from if you go back years ago when people did various things. I don't want to say there's an awakening because we already woke, but as movements begin, we begin to come more together and become one voice on certain issues, right? At least become a more powerful voice. And I believe in this sense, the movement created a more powerful voice where we had to be heard. And so now folks are really starting to take a second look at a lot of things, like things you might have not even paid attention to 2 years ago. Now you're paying attention to it. And I think that that's a good thing. So I think it's a good thing that what happened, it created a conversation, around that. And, there are people that, when you talk about that, they call you anti-immigrant, they call you haters, they call you divisive, they say you pushing the Republican conservative agendas and all these other different kind of things, and of course we know that these folks inject themselves into these discussions and try to twist the narrative and so on. But we kind of allow that. We still got to stay on point and stay on code. And I think, what the Harriet movie, and this lady Cynthia, I think she got what she deserved, in the sense of the pushback, the backlash of it, because she's out there thinking she can freely say what she want to say and tweeting derogatory things about Black Americans. Mm-hmm. So you get what you deserve. Right. That's the way I see it. Right. So I'm glad that folks having this conversation about it and so on. And they try to, I know this is not part of the conversation, but they try to make it seem like the movie was a success. Here you got two movies. You got The Terminator and you got Harriet. Harriet get 12 million. And they said, some say it wasn't even 12 million first. We was close to it, but not 12 million. And then The Terminator, 100 million. They say the 12 million was a success, but they say The Terminator was not. And it was $100 million. So come on, what in the world you all talking about? So we know how they try to push these certain narratives. It was successful, even though the push. No, it wasn't. Well, and I'm glad we had the conversation about it. And we need to continue to have those conversations and ruffle feathers.
Well, I think it's important. I just saw one of my friends, Keisha logged in. I don't know, she said here, "What's up, Keisha?" Hey, Jerry, what's up, Layla, Sarah, Sandra, what's going on, Drew, Miss Carol, how are you? But one of the things I thought about when I saw Keisha's name was about narratives and the framing of narratives. She's the president of the Teachers Association here, and wait, no, this was in Keisha. This was one of my other classmates in Chicago. Mm-hmm. They were striking. And okay. That's right. It was in Chicago, and the Chicago Board of Ed or Chicago Teachers, the Chicago School District, somehow they wrote some letter they were trying to say what happened, but not really say it, and throw little hints and throw little things in, because what they bank on when people make these claims is that we're not going to look at the information and research it. We're not going to think for ourselves. Mm-hmm. Right. That we're just going to take it for whatever they say that it is. And people are getting smart nowadays. And so just shout out to the folks that do the research.
Yeah.
The folks like Layla and folks like yourself and Tasha and Aramik and those that actually are going to do the work to look into stuff and uncover some of the stuff to see where the lies are. And I think we're making headway, but I think we still have a very long way to go. And I think it's very uncomfortable for we have gotten so used to, it sort of reminds me of like what happens when you know, we have a bit of success because of the way finances happen. People start to make a little bit more money, get comfortable. And what do you do when you give people money? They kind of get a little comfortable, maybe won't say much or whatever. So now we're getting to the point now where people are becoming broke again because the standard, you know, they're not raising the wages, but the cost of living costs a lot. And so people start to get uncomfortable. And it takes people to get out of their comfort zone to be willing, even willing to say anything or whatever, to push a narrative that's actually true. And so just shout out to the folks that are out here continuously, week after week, day after day, month after month, year after year, digging up the right information, telling the truth, and as you would say, staying on code and staying on point or whatever. And I just hope that people will begin to see that I want to just encourage folks that are doing it to continue to do that.
Right. Amen.
So with that being said, this Byron Allen case is extremely important. You know, a lot of people saying, I'm going to see the movie and I don't care, whatever. And it's like, well, okay, whatever. If you want to go see the movie, that's okay. But
let me just interject too. And I just want to say not so much about the Comcast or that, but Black movies in general. Like with me for years, my kids will tell you this, my wife will tell you this, because sometimes it became very frustrating for my wife. And I've been doing this for years now. I don't know how long now, but I know it's been over 7-8 years. Is that I don't, unless there's a Black person playing a major role in a movie, I do not. I did it. It's you this time.
That's weird.
Most time it's me. Most time it's me. But unless there's a Black person playing a major role, you know, not subservient, all that other kind of stuff. So I've always been that way, you know, that, you know, supporting Black, you know, where people go to different things. And so I was, even my grandbabies looking at something on YouTube, and I'm looking at the cartoon, they all white. Like, well, wait a minute, you know, I gotta find something that to where there's some Black kids in it. So my thing, I've always supported Black, right? And if Black is not there, I'm boycotting. So I've been on a boycott for a long time with the movies. You know what I mean? But with this one, this is more closer to home with Harriet, because it had to deal with, you know, American descendants of slavery, and then the Comcast the thing also, which is dealing with what we're talking about here when we talk about Black and advertising money and all those type of things. People don't realize how all this ties together, and it's the dominant society. It's another form, another way of trying to oppress us and keep us poor, keep us, you know, out of power.
Yeah, well, and I think, and I agree. I think there's I think we can see that too, man. I think we are so. There's a book I think that's called Entertaining the Church to Death or something like that. When you look at like from a biblical perspective, like entertainment is kind of really the way to go, and it's kind of the way to sell whatever it is that you have to offer. So you look at like a lot of the churches have left the common, just preaching the gospel, teaching sound scriptures and doctrine, and really walking the membership through life and through life's daily things, right? And really being there, like what they said in the scriptures, that they gathered together and they studied the apostles' doctrine and they broke bread and they visited from house to house, like those kind of basic essentials. And it's not to say that things can't change and like we're in a different culture. I mean, I get all that, but the essentials of what they meet for. But now you see like churches have adopted this idea that we have to entertain. You got to have sparklers during your service and a jungle gym on the stage while their pastor's preaching, and people,
swing out the chandeliers.
all these kinds of things, and people have grown used to that. And that's kind of the idea of our society, that we are so okay with just being entertained that when it comes time for us to deal with real issues, a lot of us don't have time for it because it doesn't have the same type of stimulation. It's hard to like go through a struggle and to continue to do it and see it to the end. That's difficult. It's easy to just watch people do it and criticize them while they're doing it.
Black people are some of the most stressed out people in this land, right, in this world, and the stuff that we go through, right? And so, But we have to stay focused on being goal oriented to understand our purpose, our mission, and stay on the mission, stay on the purpose, continue to see your goal of what we're trying to do and reach for. But a lot of times what end up happening and the reason why there's so much failure is because we get caught up in tension relief, right? What way can I relieve this tension? You know, sometimes entertainment is a way of relieving that tension. And rather than doing the hard work and staying on code, like I say, and focusing on the goal and looking at the overall picture of where we're trying to get to, don't you go over here, you're gonna fail, and we're gonna fail, right? When you start focusing on tension relief and pleasures and entertainment and all that, I'm not saying anything wrong with that. There's a time and place for that, but we overdo it. And we get so caught up in it. That's what it becomes about. We become an emotional people rather than stimulating the mind, you know. And what has happened is our mind has been captured by all of that. And we think that that's what life is all about. And so it moves to our emotions, and that's what we expect in everything. In our emotions, that's the outcome rather than thinking
it's like the mundane things of life. Yeah. We don't want that. Like the ideas of marriage and the long lasting. It's like, it's just not here for me anymore. And it's like, well, there's consequences to those things. That's like there's consequences to like giving up on something that I was thinking today, bro. It's like, man, I was talking to somebody and it just hit me. Like I've been saying, I've been with my wife 26 years. But I was thinking, man, I've been with my wife for 26 years, bro. That's a long time. Yeah. I was like, man, and it's like just year after year, you know what I mean? And it's like, and there's consequences. There's consequences for me walking away from that. You know what I mean? Like I can't like, and it's not super entertaining. Like, you know, when I come home, like it's not these weird whatever going on. You know what I'm saying? Like we create the ambiance, but it's like, it's just kind of a trip. And you're right. Like it's difficult. I'm very grateful because I just so happen to like controversy, but some of my heroes in this controversy are folks like yourself, Tasha. If you look at the work that Layla does every day, Layla was on a rant the other day, boy. She hit about 4 posts and it was good, man. She was going in about the DAs and it's like, oh my goodness, man. And it's like, I'm into that type of stuff. So that is the type of entertainment I like.
Let me just interject real quickly on this. And I know folks are going, whatever, but Facebook is good and they probably will be watching, but if you really want to send a powerful message, especially get it through the media and frame a narrative and to the politicians, it's Twitter. Even that's where it is. It takes a lot of work to work that, but that's where, and that's why a lot of times when you talk about media and contact and things like that is because of that. And so if you really want to frame a narrative and really want to make a point, you really want to get it out there, that's where you do it.
Do it on Twitter. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I think this is a good segue into, we're talking about entertainment and stuff like this and why it's so difficult for us to continue to stay in the fight and be engaged in an impactful, meaningful way, right? It's one thing to be engaged, but to actually be impactful is something that's tough. My man E.T. Wallace says the world fogs our mind's ability to clearly see the vision. That's true, very true. And all the world's accoutrements, all the things that promise us success and stuff. Agree wholeheartedly, E.T. Thank you for that. But let's look at real quick, like just to transition from that, just to take from E.T.'s comment about the world fogging our vision. There's 2 things that were at play here. The Harriet movie and why it's so dangerous to Black America. And we're so focused on, we got to help Black people. And yes, that's true. We need to do that, but at what expense? Right. So I want to know who are the historians, because the people that they're using, the people that they focus on for the history of this movie was not Black people, for one, blah, 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 right? But so who's really pushing this narrative, right? Well, whoever's financing the movie is the one who's going to ultimately be able to say what the narrative is going to be, right? So yes, but it's easy to hire Black people to do things that are contrary to the Black agenda. And they know that we'll support it. Got a Black female producer. That's great. But what is she producing? Like, we can't suspend our suspicion just because of somebody Black. We've done that too much. So let's look at what is happening behind the scenes and why this movie overall is problematic, right? It's not, thank God for the Black actors and actresses. Thank God for the Black producers, cameramen, the people who wrote the sound for it, all of that. Thank God for all of it. And they all got paid, and that's great. But let's look at what this movie, let's look at what the company who financed this, Focus Productions, let's find out and they're owned by NBC Universal, who was owned by Comcast, right? So let's look at what happens, right? And so ultimately, Comcast is footing the bill for this. If you look at the way the trajectory goes to get to Focus Productions, who was the ones who produced and sent this movie out, Comcast and Charter are cable networks. Comcast does over $70 billion annually of advertisement and gets money from their services. Black people from that get zero. There's almost nothing that Black people get from Comcast. So a lot of people say, well, what about the Black networks? Name some Black networks. And the problem is you got to really see, like, you really got to see like who actually owns the network, right? So you have, for Diddy to be a front man is different. He's a front man for Ciroc. He don't own Ciroc. Like, get out of here. Like, he's a front man. So, and we don't do no research. So we like, man, we gonna drink Ciroc because Diddy's, but he just gets a cut to be a front man. It's important. It's like when people were saying that Jay-Z owned part of the Brooklyn Nets. No, he had 1/15% of a percent.
Yeah, I remember I saw that.
Come on, stop it. Like, stop it. Stop it. We got to look into that. So, with no minority networks, there's no minorities at the seat. So when these power brokers come to the table once a month for their meetings or whatever, ain't nobody Black out there saying, hey, we need to focus on this. Let's look at this. It's not. You get a bunch of majority culture folks, which are white folks, that sit at these tables and make decisions about what stuff is going to get put on TV, right? So Byron Allen says, I want to sue you for not supporting Black networks. I'm going to sue you for not allowing us to have a seat at the table.
Amen.
So he sues them. He lost the first. He lost one. He lost two rounds. They went downtown to the downtown court. He lost 2 rounds to Comcast. He won 1 to Charter. Right. So then Charter says, well, we don't like the outcome of this, so we want to take you to the Ninth Circuit or whatever. So they take him to the Ninth Circuit. He says, well, if Charter's taking me to the Ninth Circuit, I'm taking Comcast because I don't like the fact that I lost 2 to Comcast. They go into the Ninth Circuit or whatever. And he wins all of them. He beats Comcast in both of the judge overturned what they were doing. And so he ends up winning all 3. And now they go, well, we're going to take you to the Supreme Court. So they're forcing him to go to the Supreme Court. Byron Allen's not saying let's go to the, because he won in the Ninth Circuit or whatever, right? And what he won was saying that you guys are being racist and not supporting Black money in Black networks. You are systematically erasing Black people's opportunity to participate in this in media. That's what you're doing. You got all this money and you're not spending any on Black media. You just will not do it. And they're big. And so they tried to use the First Amendment. So the case that they use, and I don't remember the name of it. I cannot remember the case that Comcast used, but it was funny. The judge was like, you can't, this is a dumb case. It was a case that they used from some folks in Boston that had a parade and they wouldn't let LGBTQ community participate in this parade. So they took them to court, but the parade people won using the First Amendment, that them being in the parade is a violation of my First Amendment rights. And the judge was like, this is stupid. And they tried to use that same First Amendment thing against Byron, that it's we have a right. It's against our First Amendment. The judge laughed and said, this is stupid. The judge ruled in favor. The judge ruled against the LGBT community in Boston. But an Asian judge in the Ninth Circuit says, no, this is stupid. They took it to a Black judge first, but he didn't even see it. Like, he just wrote a 2-paragraph thing and like let it. And my brother just was like, I ain't touching it. Asian judge says, no, this is stupid or whatever. So instead of getting reciprocity, what happens is, so where does the big headline is the Civil Rights Act of 1866 is being attacked. Why? So in 1865, December, when slavery was abolished, and ADOS was supposed to get 40 acres and a mule. Instead of getting 40 acres and a mule, they came up with the first Civil Rights Act or whatever, what they're talking about, which means that instead of getting reciprocity, 40 acres and a mule, slaves got a fair contracting. They had the opportunity for fair contracting. Well, that's assuming you can read and you can read a contract effectively or whatever. But this law was supposed to create a balance in power that allows blacks to not be manipulated by the slave owners, right? So they say we have to give you an opportunity. We can't just X you out of the ability to be able to compete for contracts and stuff like that, right? Because what happens if you get free from slaves? White folks own all the land. Black people are saying, "Hey, we want some land," and white folks go, "We ain't giving you no land." Well, this bill was put in place so that would create a balance of power. So now, what happens is if this. So Byron Allen's going and saying, so they're using this law of 1865 or 1866 again. Byron saying that what you're doing is racial, and they're saying no, it's not. And what they're trying to say, and what they tried to say in the Ninth Circuit is that you have to prove 100% that the law that we're violating it 100% because we're being racist. And it's impossible to do that, right? It's impossible to do that because if I could say 99%, Bishop Bowser, 99% of why I'm not doing business with you is because you're black. This was this is an example that Byron gave. 99% is because you're black, but 1% is because you got on tennis shoes. Well, then that violates the but-for clause, right? That you can't. That's the standard. It has to be a 100% proof that it was because of racism. Well, you can't do that. And the reason why this is so dangerous is because if that was a standard that we have to use, and the judge, and this is the killer part. The judge in the Ninth Circuit said this is ridiculous. We're not using the but-for clause. You can't prove 100%. It's any amount. It could be 20% was racism, and you're wrong. So they lost. So they're going to the Supreme Court to argue in front of the Supreme Court, trying to make the standard 100%. Well, guess whose Supreme Court it is? Guess who? It's the Department of Justice is going to. This is Donald. This is Donald Trump's Department of Justice or whatever, right? So now they're going to go to court. The same people that paid for this Harriet movie, all the millions of dollars that black people went to go see this movie, the millions of dollars that they just made. I don't care if it's 10 million or 12 million. The millions of dollars that they're making for this movie that they did.
37% black folks of moviegoers, the see that was black.
And guess what's going to happen? All that money, not all, but whatever the profits were off that bank's going straight from black hands into the hands of Donald Trump's Department of Justice and the lawyers that are fighting against the Supreme Court case of 1866. So if you paid to go see that movie, you paid to, and this is not a guilt trip. It's just an understanding of what happens when we support things that are against our own better judgment. So they're going to take this case before Donald Trump's Department of Justice. They both get, Byron Allen's team gets 30 minutes to argue, and so does Comcast Charter, right? They get 30 minutes. Well, Comcast Charter is going to give 10 minutes of their time to Donald Trump's Department of Justice to stand before the Supreme Court in support of this decision or whatever. And Donald Trump's Supreme Court wrote an amicus brief in support of Comcast and them, right? And we couldn't even get one. We couldn't even get amicus briefs from the national, from the NAACP national. The National Action Network wrote something in support of Comcast. The Urban League, the National Urban League, wrote something.
Black Caucus.
And 8 members out of, I think there was 40 some Black Caucus members didn't support this, and 8 of them did. What's the point? The point is that we are if we lose, the consequences of this case not going right is that whenever you go to prove that somebody discriminated against you, you're going to have to prove 100% that it was racism and nothing else. You know how it's impossible to do that. So the Department of Labor came on board too. The Department of Labor, or I can't remember the name of the the group that came alongside of Comcast. But if, in effect, what happens is you won't even be able to, Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber of Commerce came in support of the National Chamber of Commerce came in support of Comcast. So guess what happens? Now, if we lose, what we stand to lose is that if you get discriminated at work, the Chamber of Commerce and lawyers ain't going to take your case. Why won't they take it? They're not going to take it on a contingency. They won't take it on just say, hey, I'll give you some now and some after we win, because they're gonna be like, hey, it's 100. We got to prove 100% that you did this, and there's no way to do that. So you're not gonna be able to take nobody to court for discrimination. It's gonna be impossible to prove, and they're gonna destroy that very law of 1866 that was created to give us a fair seat at the table to be able to negotiate in good faith or whatever, to be able to get contracts, and they're attacking that. And so it's hypocritical for them to be financing a movie about the woman who is arguably one of the most iconic people in American descendants of slavery history or whatever, to use the very work that she did to try to destroy it by taking Byron Allen to court. And they did that before the Supreme Court and trying to stack the odds against him or whatever. It's ridiculous. And that's why I'm not going to see the movie. It's bigger than Cynthia Erivo. It's bigger than that. There's a bigger thing involved here or whatever. And just on principle, on GP, I'm going to see the bootleg. I ain't going to watch it before I go pay to see it. So what do you think? What's your view?
Very well said, man. I think the important thing, what I'm thinking of when you talk about, especially if they overturn this law, this act, because I've been in labor, that's one of the things that we've always had to deal with anyway. You know, when whether we tell them go get a lawyer and sue the department for discrimination or file a grievance or whatever, the issue that in labor, the issue that we've always dealt with is what you're talking about right now, is that the only way you'd be able to sue somebody and prove it, and this is not with contracts, but talking about like somebody discriminating against you for promotion or fire you or whatever, you have to actually prove. This person has to actually say, I'm firing you because you're black, or I'm not promoting you because you're black. And that was almost the only way that you can basically win, unless you have a lot of circumstantial evidence to prove, that, hey, this is what they've been doing. Look at the difference of how they treated me and all the white folks and so on and so forth, to be able to prove that. And so what it looked like now is like in the higher ups and dealing with the contracts and things like that, you're going to have the same thing. Because I'm telling you, that practice is already out there, and they've already doing it. I'm glad that Byron has found the 1866 law to challenge them on that, and so and we got to deal with it. So I think let's deal with it. But I don't know if this is the best time to deal with it because of the way the Supreme Court is made up.
Well, Donald Trump's DOJ and it's the Department of Labor, the Chamber of Commerce.
Those folks do not care about black people.
Donald Trump, absolutely. And guess what? And once again, American descendants of slavery might get the brunt of the discrimination, right? Or that we have to do the brunt of the fighting, right? We always have to fight for these particular things, but it's all minorities. Right. All minorities are going to be in trouble behind this. If you are Hispanic and somebody treats you racist, and you go to sue, guess what? The 1866 law affects all minorities. That's going to just overthrow everything. All non-whites are going to. So except for American Indians, they have their own law that is in place for them. But everybody non-white in the United States is going to be affected by the outcome of this. And people just sleep going to celebrate a black movie. And my thing is, man,
where's Congress at in all of this? You know what I mean? And what I mean by that is, it's like they're, even. I'm sure they're probably waiting to see what happens here, right? And I know we have a Republican Senate that won't pass anything, but the Congress is supposed to be Democratic, supposed to be for black people. They should be trying to work on passing a law in there.
They won't say
just even if it's symbolic from the perspective of letting us know, hey, we stand with you all.
I think a lot of this, as I listen to folks, and here's the thing, I only got into politics probably just over a year ago. Right. Well, a little bit, a year, maybe 18 months, 14, 16, 18 months that I've listened to politics. I've tried to understand, whatever, but I've never been involved. So it's been about 18 months that I've actually been sort of paying attention. And a lot of it is more local stuff, right? Because that's the stuff that affects us on a daily basis. Whoever the president is, I get it. But the truth is like we're immediately affected today. Like the president can go away and get impeached, and
the law's still there.
It don't matter. We're right here. And so I think what has happened is we've gotten so used to going, we said earlier, being entertained that we forget about the stuff that's important right here in San Diego. And I think people need to pay attention. I know people need to pay attention to the stuff that Layla is posting and talking about with the DA's office and some of the other things that are happening in jails. And like these people are pulling the wool over folks' eyes or whatever. People are just being comfortable. People are just being like, hey, it's no big deal. Like we're so used to being traumatized with all these things that we see on a regular basis. if you look at the average young person, sees probably over 10,000 murders in their lifetime, whether it be on TV, video games. So, I mean, we're just desensitizing people to rape and all kinds of, because they got video games where you can go carjack somebody's car, kill everybody around, rape the woman that's in there, make a whole lot of money, kick her off the car, beat her up, jump back in the car and drive away. These are video games that kids are playing at 10, 12, 11 years old. So like just a whole lot of our society is being just watered down by what's going on here. And these things have a detrimental effect on the way people see America. And so I think it's important. We need to pay attention. We need to pay attention to who the DAs are. We need to pay attention to how much it costs to house somebody in the state penitentiary. We need to pay attention to what the federal, even though it's 10% of the prison system, we need to figure out what happens in the feds. We need to be aware of those things. And for me, my thing is that if I don't know all the facts, then I have to depend on folks like Layla, folks like you that are, and Tasha, that are on the front lines, actually speaking on these things, right? And so my thing is to call out people who say that they're allies and say that they're with us in this struggle. And say, my thing is, it's easy to say those things and co-opt the message for something. We always show up to support everybody else, but there's times where it's like, man, come on, y'all got to show up to support us, which leads me into
and that's the push, right? And that's where I have vision. That's what really attracted me to ADOS, right? Is because all the work you do in the community, and you see it trying to help people, different things like that. And then when he really gets down to it, you see how people claim to be your allies and they abandon you. When it comes to strictly Black issues, we are pushed in the corner. We are overlooked. We are neglected. We are trampled upon, right? We are oppressed. And so even when you talk about Comcast and what's happening there, probably the only folks that are really going to be concerned about that seriously are Black people, But like you said, it's going to affect everybody, but a lot of other people can pass as white versus Black folks. Black people can't pass as white.
And with this light, I might be one of the ones that with this light on this, I might be able to pass for white. I'm taking advantage of it. So from now on, call me, you know what I mean? Well, but I think, that leads me into, when we talk about co-opting messages, and leads me into the third thing that I wanted to talk about, and that's the idea of patriarchy in Black America, the concept of patriarchy. And we had a really good discussion, man, on Layla's timeline about patriarchy. And
so you got to fill me in. So
the idea of patriarchy is
well, I know about patriarchy, but what you said.
So there was T.I., the rapper, big controversy.
I know about that. Yeah,
about his daughter. For those that may not know, just briefly, he said that, in short, he takes his I think she's 19 now, 19-year-old daughter to the gynecologist every year to take a look at her hymen to make sure that she's still a virgin. And so people are like, man, this is wrong, and patriarchy and stuff like that. And so one of the things that I said during this conversation was, I think it's important to not, I think for Black men, we have to be careful to use the term patriarchy to discuss what happens in the Black community. Well, it just gets used for everybody. It's a blanket term for even when Black men do things that are harmful to women. And what I said was, my pushback was, what I said on this post was, if you look at what patriarchy is, the idea of patriarchy, simply based on the fact that it is power by men that's not conceded to women, and it's oppressive to women in general. And my thing in general was, there is only one group of men in America that had power to be oppressive, and it's not Black men. It's white men. White men had the type of power that had the ability to be oppressive. And so when you talk about the idea of patriarchy, it really should be pointed towards white men, because Black men don't have that kind of power. And I didn't speak more into it, and I got a call from a sister, Christina, from the community, and she said, there's somebody that was taking issue with your stance on here or whatever. And what the message I conveyed was that Black men, the message that it looked like I was conveying is that Black men can't be harmful to black women and don't call black men, that there's no sense of patriarchy in the black community, right? But I had to,
Lord have mercy.
But I had to listen. But I listened to what she said because I realized that she actually read through the comments, understood what, and she spoke to. So I was like, man, I said, let me go back and kind of look. And it was like, man, I just went back and I amended. I didn't amend, but I added a comment that said, hey, I just want to say, I'm not trying to give black men a pass. There's a lot of harm that happens with black men, but the fact that and the term that was suggested that I use, because one of the questions that was asked during the post is, what word would you actually use then instead of patriarchy? And I wasn't sure what to use. And the word that I was given was misogynoir, which is like black misogyny, like misogyny by black people. So men being hurtful and causing pain specific to black women or whatever. And I was like, that's a great word. And what I was trying to convey is that black men don't have the same kind of power. They don't have the same kind of power. And I was trying to nuance. I'm not saying that black men don't have the same kind of pain, don't cause the same kind of pain. It's just a different type of power, right? It's a different kind of power. And so, yes. And so, but what I was likening it to was when you talk about racism, people say, can black people be racist? Okay, technically, based on the dictionary, yes, because racism is simply showing prejudice towards someone or what.
But I think you got to be tied to the dominant society as far as power.
But that was the other point I was going to say. Like, yes, according to the dictionary doesn't have this idea of power attached to it. The dictionary talks simply about racism being me being prejudiced towards you because I believe my race is better than yours. So if I do something to somebody white because I believe my race is better, but when we talk about racism as it pertains to America, it has that power dynamic attached to it. So yes, black men cause tons of pain to black women, but we have to look at where it comes from. We got to look at why it happens. We have to look at the trauma that's caused to black men, the DNA changes that have happened since slavery. I'm not excusing it. Yes, it's pain, but for us to allow white women and black women together to attack black men, I think is inappropriate. And I don't support that. I support holding black men accountable, but not for the same reasons. Because in the example I gave is, there's the feminists are wearing those hats with the pink vaginas on them, right?
I didn't see that.
So they call it something different. I can't say it. If you wasn't here, I'll say it what it is, but because you're here, I gotta watch what I say. But I look up to you, man.
Thank you.
But
honor.
But my question is, show me a black man that has ever had the type of power that makes women want to wear one of those hats. Mm-hmm. Black men just don't have that type of power. Women wear those kind of hats because of the oppressive tactics of white men. Mm-hmm. And black men shouldn't be held. I'm not saying black men shouldn't be accountable. Yes, we should. And I had to apologize on the post for making it seem like I was giving like a way out for brothers. Brothers cause a ton of pain, period. You know what I mean? And it's ridiculous, but we have to see where it comes from. White people have had the power and have had the rule and have been oppressive and continue to be oppressive in general. Black people don't have the ability to be oppressive. Black people are acting out of the fact that they are oppressed and that oppression is here and the trauma is manifesting because of something different. And it doesn't hurt any less, but I just wanted to nuance that word to say, let's not call black men. Let's not use the term patriarchy. That's reserved, I think, wholly for white males. Let's use the term misogyny from black men that's specific towards black women.
I don't like none of that, misogyny, toxic masculinity, and all that. I mean, you could talk about those things, but a lot of times what ends up happening is that black folks, and more specifically black women, adopt these things from feminism. And now they say white feminism. But whether it's white feminism, black feminism, or any other kind of feminism, I take issue with it. And, people might get mad. But, that's for way because I'm going to talk about patriarchal, but I see it as of the devil. It's demonic. It's evil when you talk about feminism because it's trying to rebel against this institution that God has set up, right? Because when you talk about patriarchal, the original word for that is talking about the rule of the father, right? In his home, right? That's what that word really comes from. The father being, the Bible says the man is the head of the woman. And God told the woman that your husband shall rule over you. And so this is not something that, it's not in general, when you talk about men in general, on a spiritual and a Christian or a believer aspect of it, when you're coming from scriptures and when you're talking about us as believers, and so and what God has said and the system that God has set up, man is the head. He's the headship. He's the ruler of his home. He's the man of decisions. And that don't mean you're a bully. That don't mean that you're an
I think it's important to flesh that
person.
out. What does that mean?
Because he's got to take care of his wife like he nurses and cares and take care of his own body, right? And you got to love. If we love people like we love ourselves, then we're not going to mistreat anybody in that sense, right? When you have a godly love. But the devil wants to pervert and twist things and twist up the system of God. And so we know where this stuff comes from when you talk about using patriarchal in another sense, when you talk about the oppression and the abuse and the rule of man as far as in these political and societal systems is feminism. White women came up with that, and they still use that. And then black women try to come with black feminism because they say, hey, you know, yeah, we suffer where you suffer, but also you got to deal with race. And so one of the things that I like that I saw a woman use is called Africana womanism, because what they said, we're not feminists, but we focus on the family. There's like 18 things they look at, and one of us focuses on the family, and they say the black man is not our enemy, right? He's not our enemy, and he has a role to play in this. And I think what feminism does many times when you tie it to patriarchal, because you can't talk about the way they use a patriarchal and not talk about feminism, okay? And so the way feminism work is, or when you look at feminism, it's looking at the man, and white women looking at white men as if not the enemy, but try to overthrow his power of him, what he's at the top here, which we know he is. But when you talk about black folks, we can't use the same thing that white folks use when you talk about patriarchal or feminism. We can't use their ideology because we're completely in a whole nother different lane, right? And the only place where a man might have a sense of authority and power and feel like a man is in his home, right? Let him be the king of his home. I mean, he can't be it nowhere else. Everywhere else you go, he's humiliated, emasculated, right? You know, from slavery on up, the primary target in this country is the black man, to oppress him, to destroy him. And of course, his family as a whole, which includes his wife and children. But he's the target because you cut off the head, you know, the body of this person. That's what has happened when you go back to the 60s and you come up today and you see the destruction of the black family. That's where it's coming from, right? It's coming from destroying the man, the black man, crippling him, emasculating him. And so even when you talk about misogynist and toxic masculinity, what ended up happening is that you start having a lot of folks just focusing on black people, right? And discriminating, singling out black men versus all these white men that really are in power, really abusing it, and everybody working together to cover it up, right? And you don't see people really crying out, but they'll go after the Bill Cosby's, the Michael Jacksons, the O.J. Simpson, and various other folks, R. Kelly and people like that, and really blow it up, make documentaries. Then you got all these other folks in power, white people in power, doing way worse things or even equal things. But
they elected a president that talked about grabbing women by their coochies
and all that kind of stuff, you know, and they'll defend that kind of stuff, right? And then
85% of the women who he was talking about voted for him.
Right, exactly. Because like that sister had that sign out there when the women was marching, y'all voted for him.
He ain't gonna grab no sisters by their stuff.
Yeah, you know, so it's kind of crazy. So when you talk about this patriarchal, you know, and you and I look at it as a pastor and as a believer on the spiritual side of it, is that I kind of see that as a demonic, right? Because the devil wants to overthrow the system of God.
Let me dig into that a little bit, because what I hear people, what I would imagine people are saying is, you saying men are up here, or whatever. So I want to push back. I agree with you, but I want to push back because I think it's important for people to understand what you are saying. What does it mean for you to be the head of a woman? What does that mean biblically? What does that mean? Give me some examples of how headship
Absolutely.
What headship looks like in the Bible.
And this is where, and before I say that, before I get there, and this is where we come and we talk about, and that's why I'm so hard on brothers, right? On men more than women. And I got issues with them because they're not doing what they should be doing. But you know, I'm always looked at as the troublemaker, what have you. But when you talk about being you know, a husband, a father, and a man, you're a man of decisions. You're a leader. You're a provider. You're a protector. You're that covering for that woman and for that home, right? And that means that man takes care of his wife and his children, right? She's not inferior. She's not inferior to him, right? Eve wasn't inferior to Adam. So people need to understand that, but you have a role. And people need to understand, if we're talking scriptures and talking Bible, is that Eve was the one that was deceived. And that's the whole point of it, was she was the one that deceived and gave to her husband, but Adam was the one responsible.
Adam was right there with her. He said, let me get some of that.
No, he blamed it on the wife, right? He said, "Now
she blamed it on the serpent.
What is this you done?"
She blamed it on the serpent. He blamed it on the wife.
This is a woman you gave me.
Adam was a Adam was
but God investigated. If you look at it, you see how God investigated, right? He shows us how to investigate. If you watch or if you read the book Genesis chapter 3, you'll see how God investigated, and He investigated and got to the core of it. And everybody had a role in it. Have to take some responsibility of it and face the consequences of it. That's why we have to die because of what Adam
did. Let me ask you this.
And Eve, that's why she has pain when she gives childbearing. But he also said, your husband shall rule over him. And a lot of times what people get twisted on, and I want to bring this in, is that what they get twisted many times is like, your desire shall be for your husband. People think it's sexual and all that. But what he's talking about is that
your desire for the power that your husband has, right? Or the authority.
But just turn it around the other way, in a sense of that he will determine what her desire shall be, in the sense of what she shall do. He has the last call. He has the final decision on that. And a lot of times people don't understand. I know the way society has made things, and in people's mind, in this feminist society, people think, oh man, that's male chauvinist, that's this, that's that. Whatever, I'm sticking with God.
Well, I think it's important too. Like again, being the head. See, it's kind of like it to me. It reminds me of people who have had a negative experience with their dad, and then now with their father, and now you make God out to be a father figure. This person is going to infuse those same problems she has with her natural father, and it's going to cause a barrier between her and her heavenly father, right? So you have to work through those issues and say, listen, here's what a father is supposed to be. We know what you're seeing or what you've seen, but here's what a father's supposed to be. And I think it's the same thing as headship and leadership, right? If you look at the folks who go who were the leaders in the war? I can't think of the where did they Normandy? Who were the leaders in Normandy? The people who walked out first. Those are the leaders, the ones who jumped out the boats first and ran up and started getting killed. That's what leadership looks like, or whatever, right? We don't like that. Our view of leadership is someone who sits way upstairs in the comfort and twiddles their thumbs and tells everybody to do this.
Well, like pastors do that. Oh, I'm the pastor, you the sheep, you go out there, you better lead the way.
And guess what? You have a right to rebel against that kind of leadership because it's stupid. Exactly. That's not real leadership. Real leadership does not say, you guys do all the work, I'll make all the decisions, and I'll pay you whenever I'd like to. Like, we see this crooked society that has been dominated forever by white males who have created rules and have oppressed. Women couldn't even vote until 1920, like 1920. You know what I'm saying? Like because of patriarchy, because the unwillingness to relinquish power. And then black people didn't get the right to vote till 45 years after that, till 1965. You know what I mean? And so we see like an ongoing oppression for 45 more years. And so when we think of headship and leadership, we think of that, what would be toxic masculinity, which it is toxic masculinity. What's that?
White women.
White women had a right to vote in 1965. That's when black people, period, got an opportunity to vote. But my point is that when leadership, people that rebel against the idea of male headship are not, ultimately, yes, it goes back to rebelling against God's order. But I believe a lot of what people are rebelling against is what the idea that has been promoted about what leadership is.
Mm-hmm.
So like people say to me, like, I'm the head of my household. Mm-hmm. I am. I'm the head of my household. Like, but what does that mean? I always tell people I'm the head, but my wife is the neck. Mm-hmm. How many of y'all went to work the other any days with a headache? Mm-hmm. It's harder to go to work when you got a neck ache. Right? So imagine what happens, right? If I'm not leading correctly, right. And my wife isn't happy. Right. So, and my thing is like, I never asked my wife how much money she made when she worked outside the home. I never asked her anything about how much money she had. I don't question her about our money. I don't put nothing. I don't say where you're going. I don't try. And I'm saying that I'm the perfect husband, but I'm saying like when it comes to making decisions, she's more than happy to. She can make whatever decision she wants to. But because we kind of have a direction that we're going, and she knows that like here's kind of what we've decided on. But here's where headship comes in my home. Mm-hmm. If we come to a place where we can't agree, then I reserve the right to have the last say, right? Mm-hmm. But what I've learned over time is that a lot of times it's better for me to listen to my wife. She might be right. Yeah. You see, and so I think what I want to, the reason why I think it's important to talk about this is because male headship is not the problem. That's why I agree with toxic masculinity, what that means, because we talked about masculinity as being, you got to lord over people and you got to, force people to do things and force your woman to do something. That's not what real headship and godship looks like. That's not what God considers leadership, because if it was, Jesus would have ruled that way. Jesus would have came down here and forced everybody to do whatever, but we see that he didn't do that. He came down, he humbled himself and became a servant. And he hung himself on the cross or whatever. And that's real leadership, right? Real leadership was, I could do a whole lot of things to you, but I'm not, because I know what my purpose is. So, and the reason why I want to say that is because I think it's important that if we look at who has created this system that we see here, it's the system that's designed by the devil, we know that, but who gets to take advantage of it? That's right. And when people are taking advantage of a system that's run by the devil, it's demonic, and those folks are being influenced, and we cannot borrow ideas from this system. We can't. That's been oppressive, because when we think about what it means to be a supervisor, you model it after people that have been your supervisors before, that have been jerks, that talk crazy to people, that are rude. And then when we try to do it, not only does it not work for us because it don't work for anybody, but it really ain't gonna work for you because you black and you ain't never had no power. So we have to be careful. So I think it's important to push what is God's idea of real leadership is leading in humility and being willing to suffer and to be able to give yourself for the benefit of somebody else. That's real leadership. And that's why I agree that men are the head of the household. Men are the ones that should. I tell my wife, I don't want you at the door.
But the way society is set up today, especially with whatever feminism you want to look at, or any other narrative that or not so much narrative, but ideology and philosophies and different things that people create in these narratives, it almost make it push you to a place of where that you don't want to say those kind of things because of the way they are defined, right? I'm the head of my house. Oh, you're a misogynist. You're a bully, or you're abusive husband. You got to be hidden. No, you're all equal. Blah blah. And so we bring all this. So, like you said, we can't bring what's going on in this world into our godly homes. But what ends up happening a lot of times is that it starts having that influence. At least when you're out there and like you say, see, like you shouldn't have to explain all this like you just did what I said, right? But you got to, so people can understand the terms and the words that I'm saying. They don't get it twisted and use it some other kind of way. But and that's the sad thing, right? So many times we just remain quiet and don't say anything. I know what I gotta do. I know my leadership I'm doing. I'm not, because they gonna misunderstand me when I say something. If I say something about leadership, if I say that I'm the head, or if I say that I'm the leader, if I say that, for lack of a better way, it's a shot caller or whatever, Well, who do you think you are? So you're a toxic masculinity. You're a misogynist and all this kind of. What can I say? Get out of my house. Get out of my business. You know what I mean? This is my house and this is my business. Let me and my wife do things the way we want to do it according to God, right? And what God is called. My wife ain't no pushover. You know what I mean? She ain't gonna do anything. If she don't want to do it, she ain't gonna do it.
And when you look at the people, when you look at the,
she probably tell me more, give me orders more than I give her.
And you know what? And there's nothing wrong with that. I think
exactly.
I think it's important though. If you look at who is the one that has been leading since America was, since we've had, you know what I mean?
White supremacy.
And so, when
feminism is tied into white supremacy, and people don't really understand it. They just what white feminists are saying is that they want to share in white supremacy. They want to share in institutional, structural, and systemic racism. So they want to share. They want a piece of that power of systemic racism. Then black women come with black feminism, try to tie into that, but it ain't going to work. Because they're not going to let you. That's what is happening. They're not going to let you in and share in that power.
Here's an example.
But they'll frame these narratives that you can use to feel like you got a sense of power. Oh yeah, go touch that black man. Go beat him down when he's already beat down.
Well, you can see that is an example, like in someone like Kellyanne Conway. You know what I mean? That's the spokesperson for Trump. And what you call his daughter that just left the White House. Sarah Huckabee. You see people who want to share in that power that are completely oppressive, get up there and lie every day and got to make all kinds of excuses. And all the people that are a part of that cabinet that are in positions of power are doing it at the expense of all of other Americans. But that's just to say, it's kind of like doing whatever you can to be friends with the bully. I want to be friends with the bully. Like, bro, what kind of guy are you? I don't know, but I know I don't get my lunch money taken no more. You know what I mean? So I'm going to talk about your mama, and you're not going to say nothing to me, because if you do, the bully's going to beat you up. So now you become like them just so you can have a seat at the table. I don't want no seat at the table. You know what I'm saying?
All these folks at the table with all this white power, and then folks start talking about this person's toxic masculinity, but they have control of media and everything else. So they friend in there and go, oh, look at that black guy, toxic masculinity. And so then our sisters are attacking us, beating us down, and so on, joining with the white feminism.
Paris Denard tried to do that. That brother Paris Denard.
Oh, yeah.
Used to be on CNN arguing. Guess what happened? Got caught cheating on his wife. You didn't hear nothing about that, brother.
Was he married?
That's what somebody was saying. He did something wrong.
But I didn't know he was married. I read about the story.
He did something, and he ain't heard nothing else about it. Because guess what? You don't get the same thing that anybody else gets, brother. You know what I mean? And so
when you're powerless, when you don't have the power, it's easy to oppress you and kick you out.
They say power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So I think So I guess the idea is that male headship is all about humility. It's about honoring women, being a servant, suffering,
love,
absolutely
caring,
so I think that's a discussion all on its own. What does it mean to be a man? And we'll talk. Maybe we should just bring some other brothers on to talk about some of that stuff too, man.
Yeah, because a lot of our brothers are not stepping up to the plate, and when we talk about marriage, because they're not really committed to you if they don't marry you. And a lot of our brothers need to quit trying to be a player, right? And we have a big problem with that. I see it all over, and it's hard to talk to our young ladies and get them to understand that a lot of these guys that you think, being flashy, being smooth, being all that kind of stuff, not what a man is all about, right? How you dress, what kind of car you drive, and how you talk, and all that kind of stuff. Show me your leadership. Show me by an example, right? Be a good example to me of leadership and of what a man is, and then we can call you a man. But today, you don't have that. But just simply because I'm a male, and women want a man, and lack of black men, they go for anything, and there's no accountability on the side of our young black men as far as holding them accountable to be men, right? To teach them to be men. You have more women in black churches now. In the white churches and the Latino churches, the men are there. But in the black churches, you don't see too many of them there. They try to blame a lot of different things, but it's deeper than what they try to say, even about the church and things like that. And that's why you have women run the church, because there's a lack of brothers, in there, coming in there. But that's where I learned when I got saved in '84. I knew nothing about being a man. I knew nothing about being a father, and I had a son. I had Jay Jarashian, and I knew nothing about being a father. I knew nothing about being a man. I knew nothing about nothing. And I will say that the church didn't even teach me, right? So I had to learn through trial and error, and I had to, God, of course, through the scriptures, and really, develop myself and grow into it, right? And so, 33 years of marriage, still learning how to be a husband, still learning how to be a father, right? Got my little grandson that we're going to end up raising him. But I believe I get better every time. I get better every time, and so it's a growing process and stuff, but you got to get on the journey, and quit trying to, whatever you're doing out there, playing around and messing around, that it ain't about that. If you're really going to man up, it begins by, as what the Bible said, for this cause a man shall leave his mother and father and be united to his wife.
Yeah.
And that's your journey of becoming a man.
Well, I want to ask Christina as a community member. I want to ask her if she'll come on maybe next week or something to see if we can talk to her just to flesh out what it means to be a Black woman and to separate ourselves from the ideas of white feminism and why that doesn't work for Black people. She has a real good perspective of that, so we'll see. We're at 1 hour and 9 minutes. If you want to, I'd love for us to hit this Voice of San Diego article about policing in the state of California. Will you hit that real quick?
Yeah, I can hit that real fast.
And we'll end on that if you don't mind.
Yeah, we hit that real fast. I want to say a couple things about it. Not so much about that, but other things also tied into this.
Sure.
Is Voice of San Diego, go read the article if you haven't read it, in regards to police throughout the state of California and officers who have committed crimes and still working on the police force, still have a gun and everything. Some of them were like domestic violence and things like that, and still have a on the force and can have a gun. And so in San Diego, they talked about there are at least 4 people who have criminal records that are still working as police officers. One guy had talking about domestic violence, had numerous times someone called, his wife had to call police to his house, to their house, because of his abuse. And I know a lot of this was before Chief Nislite, but a lot of this is under Chief Nislite too. And he ain't cleaning up house, he ain't changing the culture. And I think that's a part of the problem, right? But the real problem, and I must say it, I know people gonna get mad at me, but I struggle. Let me just say it this way, because this is my struggle.
It's bad when somebody starts to say something.
Let me get you back. I struggle, man. I struggle with this because, from one perspective, I don't want to be selfish, right? I have a self-interest, but I don't want to be selfish from the perspective of saying, because of my relationship with this, like everybody else should hate on him. You know what I mean? But at the same time, when you see the corruption, when you see how he's policing our community, it is a sad day when we have coalitions still meeting with him, right? And think that's a good thing. All you're doing is making him look good, because then he can say, oh, well, I'm meeting with the community and so on. And when I talk about the abuse and how he done us, and many of us like Tasha, myself, and others, and so on, there's blatant revenge, vindication, and all type of other things that they do. And which I think it shouldn't, if you're going to have community-oriented police, you're going to build good relationship, build trust in the community. You're supposed to treat everybody right and be fair to everybody, but they're not. But yet these coalitions will meet with him, and that makes him look good. It'll make you look good, because he ain't changing the way he's policing the community. He's not changing the culture. And that Voice of read that Voice of San Diego article. And so, just like you calling out the DAs, people calling out DAs, and start calling out Chief Nislite too. Start calling out the San Diego Police Department. I don't know why they're giving him a pass. You won't give Summers a pass, but you'll give him a pass. And I believe they are the first responders, so they're the first stop, and they're doing a lot of stuff that need to be addressed, right? And nobody's saying anything, but yet we talk about we well here, because that's the way the narrative has been framed with the district attorney's office, which is a part of it, because they file charges and different things like that. But it starts with the police, and it starts with the corruption that is there, and it starts with not only the chief, because when you look at this Voice of San Diego article, what's going on with our mayor? I know he's a deadbeat or whatever you want to, what they call him.
Duck, lame duck.
Yeah, lame duck.
Lame deadbeat.
lame duck mayor, because they have, but that's
no deadbeats in the
that's
set.
a year from now when the elections happen. So why is he just sitting silently by? Why nobody's holding him accountable? To do something about this, right? How in the world is Chief Nislite still the chief, right? And he's ruthless. This dude is ruthless, and they need to do something about it. But they're not, as long as the community keep giving them a pass. And that's all I'll say about it. You're giving Chief Nicolai a pass. You have all these various coalitions meeting when they ought to take a stand and say, we ain't meeting with you no more until you treat our community members right. But they ain't doing that because they don't care about nobody but themselves.
A lot of folks are going to be quiet because of the money. Well, it's a trip with $1,000 to do to somebody that need to buy paper. You know, people do whatever they can for that little bit of money. Boy, you know what I mean? They people do a lot of stuff for money. That's if you want to keep somebody quiet, give them some money. That's the reason why.
Sell out.
Oh, and just going back to this real quick, I want to just say, when you talk about money, one of the things I want to point out is that the National Urban League, they got $1 million from Comcast. So that's why they're not going to stand in opposition to what Comcast is doing. They're going to stand with Comcast because Comcast gave the National Urban League $1 million. I don't know what they gave to the NAACP, but if you want to find out why people are being quiet, and there's people in the community that's quiet too. A lot of people in the community that we hold up as heroes that's quiet or whatever, and they quiet because they know that money's coming from somewhere, right? Got a relationship with the police and all that. That's the reason why that's the reason why they'll be quiet. And it's okay. But just an encouragement to everybody that is out there pushing against the system. Tasha Williamson pushing against the system. Layla Aziz pushing against the system. Mika Glass pushing against the system. To the police officers that's in there pushing, and you may not be pushing publicly, but folks make phone calls when things are happening, and they're pushing against the system. They're keeping folks aware of the stuff that's going on or whatever, pushing against the system. Folks that are out here pushing the line and pushing against the system, man, good job. We see you, and it's coming together slowly. Don't stop. Don't quit 5 minutes before the miracle happens. And so I guess I'll just end by saying, obviously it's always good for anybody who will come later and watch. The folks that have come on so far and watch. Tom always watches. Tom watches every week. Just want to shout out to Tom. Man, the whole purpose of us talking is just to maybe to try to be some kind of a voice. We realize that we're not the voice, just two voices. We want to start bringing more people on. We'll maybe bring Christina.
And we need leadership, right?
Yeah, and we just want to provide I guess an iota of leadership in the Black community.
And when I see people, Lord, we need help.
But I want it to be inclusive. I want us to bring in other people to be able to talk about what they're doing. And so we've been talking about that. Next week, I'm looking at trying to get Christina in here if we can. April, I forgot, I didn't see her comment. She said, hey guys, love you. We love you too. And she said, when am I going to be on the show?
I know
soon. Soon. We want to bring her on to talk about Open Heart Leaders.
Been talking about that for a while.
Yeah, what she's doing.
I think probably, we got to work. Yeah,
let's go over to her studio. We'll do a show from her studio or whatever. So we'll do that. We'll talk to you about that soon.
She's been supporting. She's been on there, and
right on. Tom said keep pushing. Super grateful. So just happy to be alive. Happy to be here. Those of you that will tune in later on and watch it. Thank you for watching. And if you have any questions or comments, man, just leave it in the section. We'll answer it. Get back to you. If not, whatever. No big deal. But thanks for your time and your love.
And don't be jumping on Jason when he's addressing patriarchal.
It's cool.
I didn't even know how that was going on.
It wasn't bad.
It wasn't bad.
No. Let me say this. And then we're going to quit. Let me say this. I want to send a shout out to Christina for calling me and bringing the issue to my attention and actually having a conversation. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about when she's on the show is, what do we do when we have a problem with somebody? Somebody had a problem with something I said. That's not bad. And she said, what do we do? And I said, exactly what you're doing. Bring it to me. Because good leadership isn't afraid to be criticized. I'm not afraid to be. If I did something wrong, I will come back and apologize. I don't.
Every day.
It's okay. Yeah, it's okay. So we're going to keep pushing. But we get up out of here.
You're surprised at the texts and different things I get. I mean, I'm talking from politicians, all kind of people.
I'm not surprised. And people act like ain't nothing happening. People and there's some things going on. There's some things going on. There are some there's things behind the scenes. People, but anyway, but we love you guys a lot. Glad to have the chance to sit and talk with you guys tonight, and enjoy your weekend. Or
God bless you.
Weekend.
Love you. God bless you.
Enjoy your week.
It's all in love.
Every ounce of it, every iota, and we out of here.